You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is January 21st, 2019. It is also the feast day of St. Agnes. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we are going to keep talking about the important theological virtues. Last week, we talked about faith. This week, we are talking about hope. Now, to introduce us to the topic of hope, let's talk about today's saint, St. Agnes. So St. Agnes lived a long time ago. She was an early Christian in the city of Rome. Now, if you remember, the early Christians did not have a very easy time. At the time, Romans and the Emperor of Rome worshipped pagan gods, and they were not very tolerant to people that did other things. They particularly hated the Christians. St. Agnes, however, was very devoted to Jesus Christ, and she had decided that she would remain pure, body, soul, everything, and give all that she had just to Jesus Christ. Therefore, she decided that she would not get married. However, she was the daughter of a rich nobleman in Rome. And when people started to come around wishing to marry her, and she refused them all, well, they got pretty mad. And people started to turn her into the Roman government as a Christian. The punishment for being a Christian was death, and oftentimes very brutal, horrible death. But before that, the people in Rome that were not Christian decided that they would try to simply break Agnes's vow to not get married. They attempted to strip her of her clothes and pull her through the streets of Rome. But legend has it, when they did this, God miraculously made her hair grow and cover her entire body as if she was dressed. They also tried to set her on fire, to burn her at the stake as other saints had been killed. But wouldn't you know it, they couldn't get the wood to light on fire. So twice, because of St. Agnes's amazing faith and her amazing dedication to give all that she had to God alone, God saved her. In the end, however, St. Agnes was martyred for her faith. She was stabbed, but she was immediately celebrated for her tremendous faith. And because of people like her, the Christian faith grew and blossomed in Rome, even though the Christians were treated so horribly. So, what does this story of a child, again, St. Agnes was only 12 or 13 years old when she died. What does the story of a saint tell us about the virtue of hope? Well, here is the definition of the virtue of hope. Hope means placing all of our longing and keeping our eyes fixed on heaven and trusting that God alone can get us there. Trust means refusing to walk alone. That's what trust is. Trust means, or hope, that's what hope is. Hope means that we don't see our salvation in this world. We don't see money and power or even relationships or intelligence. We don't see that as anything that is going to be long-lasting, bring us happiness for very long. We don't see that as the end. We see heaven as our home. But in the same way, we know that we are fallen, that we make mistakes and sin, and that only God, through his goodness and love for us, that only God can bring us to heaven. So hope means placing all of our trust in God. And that is what St. Agnes did. Do you think that these miracles of her hair growing or the wood not lighting on fire, do you think that's something that St. Agnes did on her own? No. And the other thing, St. Agnes didn't fear death. She knew, as many Christians did in Rome at the time, that if they really loved Jesus and if they made these bold commitments to give him everything, that they were probably going to die. Christians at the time were being killed, and they knew this. However, they made these promises boldly because they knew that their home was not here on earth, but that it was in heaven with God. They lived for heaven. They didn't live for this world. They lived for heaven. Now, hopefully you are not faced with the horrible situation that St. Agnes was, but hopefully you can take some solace and some lessons from her. And so here is my challenge for you, Sprouts, today. I would like you to think about St. Agnes and pray for her intercession. Remember, we know that she is a saint and she is in heaven, sitting at the absolute throne of God, and that she can take our needs directly to God. So please pray through the intercession of St. Agnes, who was also a child when she died. Pray that God can protect your purity and that you can place all of your hope in Him alone. That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God intended you to be. And finally, a quick note to the grown-ups. First of all, thank you for listening to the Catholic Sprouts podcast. I ask that you please consider sharing this podcast with another Catholic family you know. Send them an email, a text, or simply mention it the next time you see them. Please join me in the mission of helping each Catholic child truly sprout into the wonderful human that God created them to be.